Okay, so today I'm going to be putting in my rear camber arms on my BMW E46 because when you lower one of these cars, due to the camber arms being so long, it's going to cause it to have a whole bunch of toe in along with a whole bunch of negative camber. And the reason it causes toe in is because the camber arm goes towards the rear of the car and it pushes the front of the wheel in. Kind of just makes it like drive funny, and so I want to fix that. Obviously the first thing you want to do is jack the car up pretty high, so I'm going to do that right now. And the car is all jacked up now. So we're going to go ahead and look underneath now to see if my M3 rear end causes any complications with doing this. So of course this isn't going to be as easy as I thought, because I was already aware that you had to move the diff to get the top bolts out for the control arms. They're right there, and on the other side right there. But because this is a M3 rear diff, sorry about my hand, in a car that's not an M3 and M3s don't have spare tire wells, you can't get to the top diff bolts. Like, I tried with every single e-torque socket I have, like stubby ones and everything. You can't fit on there with that much room. Like, the spare tire well is just in the way. So the only way to get the diff loose, to get these bolts out, is to lower the rear subframe. This is probably going to be the most complicated control arm install ever. Oh, and I have to remove the exhaust. So removing the exhaust isn't that hard on this car, it's just kind of heavy. I'm in the middle of the car right now, and what you want to do is remove the 4 bolts that connect to the header. Looks like I'm missing one. And then the brace that goes to the transmission, it's just 2 bolts with nuts. And then these 2 support braces, I think these are all 13s, and the ones for the header are 15s, those are 13 too. And then all the way in the back there are 4 hangers for the muffler. So what I meant to say is there are 2 hangers and 4 bolts. So 2 there, and on the other side towards the front or back, 2 there. Alright, so I got all the bolts for the exhaust off. Now we could go ahead and drop it. And for anyone that hasn't ever done this before, I recommend putting a jack on the rear muffler so it doesn't just drop when you're undoing the bolts. Crushed my finger though. So with the exhaust out the way, I have a better view of everything under here, and I could see now that I could snake my socket, the E14, right on the bolt with the swivel. The only problem is there is quite a bit of a bend on that swivel, so I might not turn. So I'm going to now remove the rear sway bar in attempts to get it a little bit straighter and get this fucking diff out. So I got both the rear wheels off, and the next step is to remove the shock and the spring so you could get to the sway bar mounts because they're behind the spring. This is what I mean by, like, you have to remove the shock so you can lower the spring out so you can bring it out, and the shock attachment is right back there. Bolted the shock and the springs literally just dropped out. If this doesn't happen for you, because these are coilovers so they are a little bit like smaller, you could use the BMW jack in your trunk, shove it right here, and it'll separate it down so you can pull the spring out. Just be careful and take it slow because that jack does slip. So I got the rear sway bar out, and now I'm just going to slide a jack underneath the rear diff and hope that I have everything out the way so I could loosen it enough to get to those control arm bolts. So I finally got those 2 top diff mounts out, and what I ended up having to do was undo the subframe bolts, the 2 in the rear, dropping the rear subframe so it rakes down, and then using my jack handle on my 3/8 ratchet to break them loose because I don't have a 3/8 breaker bar, and that's all the room that's in there. So this is what I was working with. I have a jack supporting the diff. I got the 2 bolts out, but what I ended up having to do was undo the 2 rear subframe bolts and dropping it so it rakes down. So I got the front diff bolt out. It was a 21mm that was kind of stuck, and I shimmied the diff towards the driver's side or the left side, and now I could snake this socket right on here, and it should have enough room to come out. I'll see in a second. The passenger side is now out. You actually have to use a wrench. I don't have an 18mm wrench, so it took me like 5 minutes with this. And this was supposedly the easy side, so now it's time to do the driver's side. Okay. This bolt right here was the hardest thing I ever removed. I had to literally drop the jack and hold the diff up with like both my hands and like switch over to my feet to hold the diff up and then slide it out with my hands. And taking that one bolt out took 20 minutes. Removing the exhaust took 11 minutes. So like, the last step is to remove the two 18mm right there and right there, and this arm is fully out. And then after that you just reverse everything that was done and you're done. I finally finished. It took a while. As you can see, it's nighttime now because that diff was a pain to line up. But yeah, it looks way better. When you look straight down at it, it's more even, still negative cambered a little bit, but the toe is a lot better. That's the only reason I did this. And then on the other side, same thing.